Renewable energy stocks have been one of my favorite places to invest for a long time, but this recent sell-off in the overall market and a larger than expected sell-off in one particular stock, I have a new top renewable energy stock or green energy stock to buy going into February of 2022. Right now it's down around 21% in 2022 and it's underperforming the overall market by a pretty significant margin, and based off of its previous returns, this is pretty uncharacteristic of this company. Because in the past 5 years, the stock has a beta of 0.3, meaning that for every 1% you expect the overall market to move, this stock is expected to move in 0.3%. So underperforming the stock by this significant of a margin means there's other stuff going on. And this was pointed out in a YouTube comment that it was more than just some of the management changes that were headlined in some of the earnings reports. So we're going to deep dive into Nextera Energy, ticker symbol NEE, explain what happened in the recent earnings report, and talk about why it's my top renewable energy stock to buy right now. Before getting into it, I really appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe button, as it would help my channel grow. More than 90% of you people watching these videos are not subscribed, so let's boost those numbers. In my last video, I talked about my switch towards dividend investing in stocks, as the volatility in the overall market has switched my view of growth stocks as being the way to go for the upcoming future to more dividend and stability. We'll be switching back to growth stocks as the volatility drops, but when volatility is high, I don't think growth stocks are a great opportunity. As the price falls, dividend yields tend to go up. And as long as a company can continue to pay out that dividend as their earnings continue to grow, this is a fantastic opportunity. You're getting more bang for your buck as growth stocks continue to get killed as the market falls. So in today's video, we're going to talk about three main topics when it comes to Nextera Energy. Timestamps will be down below if you'd like to skip around to parts that you're more interested in. Number one, we're going to talk about why NEE is down so much in 2022 and the major investigation that was announced in their last earnings report. Number two, we're going to talk about the recent earnings report. We're going to go past just the main headlines that you'll see. I went through the entire presentation and talk about the important points that I found reading that, and talk about their numbers and their guidance that they released. And then number three, I'm going to summarize why I love NEE for both my retirement account, which is more of the growth side of things, and my normal account, which is more dividend focused, and why what I'm seeing on the charts right now has me very excited for the long-term future of Nextera. So part one, let's talk about the FPL investigation, because as I mentioned, this was not really talked about a lot when it comes to the headlines that were coming out about the earnings report. I got a comment in my last video saying there has to be more to it than just the change of the CEO, and this commenter was right. So if you ever see something like that in my videos that just don't make sense, be sure to talk about it in the comment section down below, because I will address it. So in that earnings report, they talked about FPL, which is Florida Power and Light, which is one of the US's largest utility companies, that there's an investigation about employees being involved in a dark money controversy. The claims are that FPL employees and FPL was involved with a scheme to siphon votes away from Senate Democratic candidates in the 2020 election. During the earnings call, the CEO, which has now been switched to a new CEO, which I'll talk about in a bit, was asked about it and said that the FPL CEO turned over emails, texts, and there was a quote, no evidence of illegality or wrongdoing on the part of FPL or any of its employees. So right now, this is a huge part of concern for investing in Nextera. Unlike earnings reports where you can pinpoint it on the calendar when the news is going to come out, an investigation like this, we're not really going to know what's going to happen. The CEO says that there was no wrongdoing, but until we see the full scope of the investigation, we really don't know what its impact on the stock price is going to be. So these are things to watch going forward. And as I mentioned, it could take a huge hit from the share price, or it could be the drop that we've been seeing where it's been underperforming the overall stock market. The allegations are overblown and they're not true, and that could be a huge bounce back opportunity. Let's talk about part two, which is going to be the earnings report. On Tuesday the 25th, Nextera announced their fourth quarter results. In addition to announcing that John Ketchum will become the new CEO, this is the management changes that I mentioned previously. The tone of these earnings were pretty positive, with headlines reporting stuff about beats to earnings per share, and that they raised their guidance for 2022 and 2023. In that report, they post earnings per share of $2.55, which is a 10% increase year over year, and a compound annual growth rate with adjusted earnings per share of 9% in the past 10 years. This is fantastic growth, and when you compare it to the other top 10 power companies, their average has been 3%. So they are significantly outperforming the earnings per share growth of the rest of the companies in that sector. And they expect to have earnings per share growth in the range of 6 to 8%, for the expectations of 2021 to 2025 to be at or above that growth range of 6 to 8% that I just mentioned. They expect to have approximately 10% increase annually for their dividends per share, or DPS through at least 2022, so that'll be for the next year. Currently, their dividend pays $1.54 per share with a yield of 2.12. And as I mentioned previously, as the stocks fall, the dividend yield increases. And as long as the earnings per share are going to continue to grow, the drop in share price doesn't really matter. It just improves the yield. Their DPS growth is going to be higher than the earnings per share, but considering this is a well-established company with a very solid balance sheet, I'm not too worried about that. Their guidance was raised for 2022 and 2023 with jumps to adjusted earnings per share, and that extends their long-term expectations of 6 to 8% annual growth rate for the earnings per share through 2025. With Florida Power and Light, which is FPL, it's the largest part of their business, and here's the important numbers that came out of that earnings report. Their net income growth increased 11% year over year, and they completed a 1,500 megawatt phase 1 of the Solar Together Community Solar Project, and they commissioned a 409 megawatt Manatee Energy Storage Center, which is the world's largest integrated solar-powered battery. So FPL is a large utility company, but they're also pushing into renewables, which I really like. But talking about renewables, because I haven't mentioned a lot about it so far, the part of their business that really focuses on that is called Nextera Energy Resources, and it's the main renewable part of their business. It operates more than 17,000 megawatts of solar and wind generation in North America, with total investments totaling more than $20 billion. From their last quarter, they had 13% adjusted year-over-year growth in earnings per share, and they added 7,200 megawatts to their backlog. When we look at renewable energy stocks, a lot of times you're seeing expectations for growth in the future, but when you look at Nextera, they have a large backlog in addition to having plenty of contracts going into the future. They have a compound annual growth rate of 20% in backlog additions from 2017 to 2021, and they currently have a total of 119 wind farms in the United States. Nextera is mainly going to be focusing on wind and solar technologies. I've talked about in previous videos that I'll link above right now, some of my hydrogen plays and some of the hydroelectric plays. But for Nextera, it's mainly going to be wind and solar. It says they're on track to meet their renewable development expectations to build 23 to 30 gigawatts from 2021 to 2024. And here's a graphic of their results page. It shows that they've beat their full year and fourth quarter growth in net income and earnings per share year over year. So that was the earnings report. Now let's go to part 3, which is why Nextera Energy, ticker symbol NEE, is my top renewable stock to buy right now. I'm looking to add this to both my dividend and my retirement account, and there's not a lot of stocks that fit the criteria for both of them. When you look at my dividend account, I'm looking for stability. And when you look at the company since 1995, it has outperformed the S&P 500 at a rate of 14.6% on a compound annual growth rate basis, compared to 9.95% of the S&P 500. Total shareholder return has beat both the S&P 500 and the S&P 500 Utility Index in the past 3, 5, 10, and 15 years. So you have the stability that I love for putting into my dividend account. I'm looking for companies that aren't going to drop significantly as the overall market falls, but are still outperforming the overall market. And it is down 21% in 2022. And this is very unusual looking at Nextera. It's underperformed versus the major indices, but looking at their track record and the raising of their guidance, I feel like this is a fantastic opportunity to buy one of the most stable utility and renewable energy stocks out there. Their dividend is expected to continue to grow at a 10% annual rate, while a payout ratio is currently sitting around 61%, which for a well-established company with a nice balance sheet makes me feel pretty safe about it. As I mentioned previously, the 5-year beta of 0.3 makes me feel pretty good as the market falls. The drawdown of a company like Nextera should be relatively small, hoping that the news and some of the panic selling with the higher volume that you saw after the earnings report will subside relatively soon. We don't really know what's going to happen with the investigation, when those results are going to be announced, or what the results are going to be. So that is something to worry about, and then the beta is not going to take that into account. So overall, you have a major utility company which owns Florida Power and Light, in addition to having major renewable energy sources, a nice increase in their backlog, and mainly focusing on solar and wind energy, and having a utility company associated with it that can not only harness the energy, but they have the world's largest integrated battery storage facility that they just finished. And it's pretty uncommon to find a well-established company that is involved in renewable energy just as a stock. You have stuff like General Electric, which some people kind of feel kind of iffy on. I think it's a renewable energy stock based off of my growth expectations. Some people don't feel that way, but it's hard to look at Nextera and say, oh, this is not a renewable energy stock. And then finally, looking at the recent stock price, When I put up this chart right now, you can see that it has recently bounced off a very significant support. I have it charted out with the purple arrows showing the times that it's bounced off of it, twice in 2019 and 3 times in 2021. This has been an area that's been respected a lot recently, and based off of its moves on Friday where it was down significantly and was bought back up, it does seem like it's respecting that support. So we're going to have to watch in the upcoming weeks and months to see if that support holds, and if so, I think it's an even better opportunity for a long-term investment. So those are my 3 parts of why I love Nextera Energy, ticker symbol NEE, for a long-term investment in my dividend portfolio and in my growth portfolio. I think Nextera is one of the top renewable energy stocks to buy out there. There aren't many renewable stocks that have the track record that it does, that has the stability and the type of business with the utility scale with FPL, and the fact that they are very far ahead of a lot of other companies when it comes to wind and solar backlog and storage. So that's why Nextera Energy, ticker symbol NEE, is one of my favorite stocks right now. I'm very curious what you guys thought of the recent earnings report, or if you think there's a renewable energy stock out there that I should talk about instead in a future video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support. If you made it this far, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe button, as it would help my channel grow. Trying to get up to 10,000 subscribers finally. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.